This painting of a cat by the national artist Ang Kyokok hangs in our living room. When my son was 5 years old, he was afraid of this cat. He believed that the cat's eyes would follow him wherever he went. At night, he couldn't go out alone because he was afraid that the cat's eyes would follow him. He would run out of the room and look straight on, not looking at the painting. Or he would cover himself with a hoodie, or sometimes, in Harry Potter style, he would go out with a blanket so that he'd be invisible to the cat. But one night, all that changed. He came out to the living room and back to our room very calmly, walking without rushing. And then he said to me, "Mama, I made a deal with the cat." And then he snuggled up beside me and slept with a smile. The following morning, when my husband was having his morning cup of coffee, he looked at the painting and then he was surprised. All of his coffee almost fell all over him because he saw that my son had covered the cat's eyes with clay. That was his deal with the cat. He wanted to live harmoniously with the cat, so he said, "Please wear eyes of clay." We laugh about it now, but that was a very powerful thing to do. He did something to change the story in his head, and he conquered his fear and anxiety about being alone at night. I believe in the power of storytelling. I believe that stories can heal us, can take away our fear, can take away our pain. I also believe that stories can destroy. So I think each of us must make the decision to tell the kind of stories that will make this world a better place. I have a unique perspective to the power of storytelling because I make clay storyteller dolls inspired by the clay storytellers in New Mexico, but I give them Filipino character and flavor from my hometown in San Pablo. Take a close look at one of my clay storytellers. Her mouth is open, her eyes are bright and alert as if she's caught up in the story that she's telling. And attached to her are little people. These are called listener dolls. Look at the different expressions. One is laughing, embarrassed, excited, and just grateful. The power of a story is unleashed in this special relationship between the one telling the story and the ones listening to the story. A story only comes alive when it is listened to, and a story can heal and become powerful in this special space. Not only do I make clay storyteller dolls, I also teach people how to make clay storyteller dolls. And in the process, I encourage them to tell their own story. I have done workshops like this for over 10 years, and I've listened to roughly 1,000 very personal stories. I have seen people tell their stories and transform their confusion into direction, their fear into hope, their anxiety into new courage, just by being able to tell their story. I remember a boy who we will call Paul. That's his real name. But he joined one of our workshops for young people. From the get-go, he made it clear that he didn't want to have any part in this mushy storytelling creative activity. In fact, he brought his friends, his sidekicks, to a corner and snickered about the work that other people were doing. He would approach and laugh at the figures that people were making. I noticed that when he would go around, the people and his friends in the room would cover their work because they were afraid he would make fun of them. We all have people like Paul in our lives. There are bullies in our life who tell stories to bring us down. These are the kind of stories that destroy us. Let me tell you 3 things about people like Paul. First, they're usually the ones who have the hardest time telling their story. Why? Because they're stuck in the cycle of their story. They're stuck in the struggle. They can't get up. So they bring other people down and create a false rise standing on the people that they brought down. Second, they are the ones who need someone to listen to their story the most. Someone to give them the heart space. Someone to give them compassion so that they can experience how to rise up again. I got Paul to work on his clay piece by sitting beside him and asking him what clay piece he wanted to make. He said, "I don't know," making it clear to me that he didn't want to be part of this activity. I said, "You can make anything you want." He looked at what everybody was doing and he said, "I don't want to make little people like them." I said, "Make anything you want." And he said, "I'll make a cell phone, the latest iPhone." He was being consistent with what he was trying to show me, that he is the kind of person who can get anything that he wants. And I said, "Okay, here's your piece of clay. Do whatever you want." And I stepped away for a while. When I returned, he had the same piece of clay that I had given him, but he put a small button on the side and a hole at the bottom and gave it to me. That was all the work that he was going to do for me. But I entered that world and I said, "Oh, it's an iPhone." Steve Jobs really made the iPhone as simple as a block of clay. He looked at me, probably expecting a line from me saying, "I think you could do better." But I didn't do that. Instead, I leaned in and I asked him, "Who are you going to call?" He said, "I don't know. Nobody." And I said, "Whose call are you waiting for?" And he looked down and then he said, "My dad's." There was the story lead, and I wanted to know when this change happened. So I asked him, "When was the last time you heard from your dad?" And he said, 4 years ago. And he looked down. That is when the change happened. And I could see that this boy had been struggling for 4 years, trying to figure out why his father wasn't calling, trying to figure out what he had done so that his father had stopped calling. "He stopped calling 4 years ago?" "Yes," he said. "That was the dip in his story." "You miss him?" I asked. And he showed me the pain that he was carrying. He was right there at the bottom. And he said, "But my mom won't let me call him." And then suddenly he told me the stories of the struggle that he was going through. And I listened and I leaned in and I allowed him to tell me what that struggle was like. And before the few minutes were up, he said, "I think maybe I can call him." And then his face lit up, lighter, softer. He had discovered something about himself. He had discovered a power in himself to make things better. And after that, when it was time to listen to the other people in his sharing circle, I noticed that he leaned forward and listened. When somebody was telling their story, he was not making fun of them this time. He was listening intently. He was not laughing at them or ridiculing them. He was now ready to listen. It's as if because somebody had carried the pain and taken it, he was now also willing to share that with others. When we listen to understand, when we listen to connect and care, we can heal others. There's a third thing we have to know about people like Paul. We all have somebody like Paul inside of us. we are often the worst friend to ourselves. We're often the worst listener to ourselves. We tell ourselves we're not good enough, we're stupid, we're unlucky, nobody will really care for us. When you hear yourself saying these things about yourself, remember that you're just in a dip in the circle. Give yourself some space. Listen to yourself. Reflect. Practice meditation. Listen to yourself until you're able to find your place in the story and lift yourself up. Remember, you are the hero of your story. And sometimes we just lose our way. But there is a higher power within us that will help us rise up, gain purpose, and become a hero to others. Let's look at my clay storyteller again. Notice that there's only one storyteller, but many listeners. That's because we need many listeners in our life. This cycle continues on and on. Sometimes rising, and dipping, and rising, and dipping, and rising, and dipping. And sometimes there are many stories happening all at the same time at different stages of the circle. So we need many people to listen to us. We need more listeners like you. Imagine that you can be a hero just by listening with compassion to somebody. In this time of isolation, we need to innovate the way we carry our conversations. We need to be intentional about creating healing conversations. Let's make a habit of saying to one another, "Hey, let's talk," or "Hey, I'm here, I'm willing to listen." We have to create circles where we feel safe to share our stories and listen to each other with compassion. We can create evenings of storytelling within our family just to listen to each other, tell the story of things happening to them, changes that are happening to each one of us in our family. Or we can create Zoom meetings or Google Meets with our friends just to talk about how are you holding up? What are you struggling through? Or maybe, what are you learning new about yourself? Where you all agree to let everyone share about their journey without putting anyone down. Let's get together with friends so that we can create a circle of compassion and we just listen until we see the rise in the struggle. To see everyone rise to the powers that they have within. Imagine a world where we can express our thoughts and feelings without being afraid of being put down, laughed at, or ridiculed. Imagine being a force of healing just by listening powerfully to another person. That's the world available to you right now. Just follow your hero's journey. Be a storyteller. Be a powerful listener. And let's all make a deal with the cat to make this world a better place.